Good evening. I thought I'd begin by telling you a story, and it's a true story about a guy who was weighing up his life and trying to see whether he should change what his life is invested in. And you might appreciate this guy's logic, okay? So you see, he had founded this company with a fellow colleague, and it was hard work keeping this company going. And I mean, it paid all right. It paid the bills, nothing special. But the hard work involved made it hard for him to justify keeping going with this anymore. He didn't find it worth it. And furthermore, he didn't much like his colleague either, his business partner. He found him cold and manipulative. He actually described him, he said, if you were to choose between my colleague and an ice cube, you'd nestle up to the ice cube for more warmth, okay? So he really didn't like this guy. So you see, this man, he was just miserable investing his life into this company, and he seemed that, well, this just wasn't worth the effort. He needed to change tact. So he did something drastic. He decided to sell up. He sold all his shares, sold them for $800, and decided to go back to what he really loved, which was engineering. And he used to make these slot machines. So it seems like he made a really good decision. Do you think that guy made a sound decision, a sound investment, changing up how he's spending his life? Well, I think it sounds fair enough so far. He's doing something that he enjoys. But what if I told you that this man's name was Ron Wayne? Has anybody here heard of Ron Wayne? Pete's nodding his head, yeah. Now, I'm sure you know his colleague better. His colleague is called Steve Jobs. And the company they founded together was Apple. See, those shares he sold for $800, today they would be worth $32 billion. 32 billion. He says that, I read an article about his life. He says now he doesn't regret the decision he made. That's absolute nonsense, isn't it? It's just, I don't care what the guy says. That is absolute nonsense. You see, hindsight is a beautiful thing. Of course it is. But if he knew Apple was going to take off in the way that it was, well, I think he would have put up with working with Steve Jobs a little bit longer, at least to make the millions. A revelation like that knowledge would have changed the line at which point he's willing to invest up to. Now, for all of us, there is a line which represents what we are willing to invest up to. If you go beyond that line, well, suddenly it doesn't become worth it anymore. It's a waste of time. If Ron knew what was going to happen with Apple, that would have moved his investment line, wouldn't it? But what about you? What about your line? Where's your line at? Now, I would suggest to all of you that you have invested your lives into something. That's just typical, isn't it? That's what life is. And now you're investing your time. You're investing your time and your attention into listening to me. But is it a sound investment? Probably quite dangerous for a speaker to ask that question. Where's the line at which point it becomes not worth it? Maybe it was when I got up to speak instead of someone a bit more captivating. Maybe it's after you've had your fill with your cakes, that becomes the point where it's not worth it anymore. Maybe it's after you've had your say on tonight's topic. That's the line. Beyond that point, it's actually not worth your time. It's not a big investment, though, is it, to consider how you use your evenings? But what about your life? What about the investment line of your life? Well, tonight we're looking at the next why question. Why was Jesus raised? And if you were here yesterday, you would have heard about why he died, but then afterwards, he was raised from the dead 3 days later. Now, why? What difference does that actually make? What does it mean? Well, one answer is that Jesus was raised to move the investment line of your life so that you can have confidence in investing in an eternal future. Now, to explain more what I mean, I'm going to share with you a story that Jesus taught, and you can find it on your tables, the Bible passage. So here it is. You can see it for yourself there. This is Jesus speaking and telling the story. Jesus told his disciples there was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So he called him in and asked him, "What is this I hear about you? You need to give an account of your management because you cannot be my manager any longer." Well, this manager is in trouble. He is in for the sack. And he knows as soon as he gets back into the office, as soon as he gets called in, that's it, he's done for. So he hatches a plan. Verse 3, the manager said to himself, "What shall I do now? My manager is taking away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig." He probably had my sort of physique. I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their houses. So you see, the guy's got a plan. He's got a plan of action, and it's a pretty devious one. He's going to make his last day at work count. And so this is what he does. Verse 5, so he called in each one of his master's debtors. He asked the first, "Come here, how much do you owe my master?" 3,000 litres of olive oil, he replied. But the manager told him, "Take your bill, come sit down quickly, make it 1,500. And then he asked the second, "And how much do you owe?" "Well, 30 tons of wheat," he replied. He told him, "Come here, take your bill, make it 24. Well, that's pretty devious, isn't it? Do you see what he's doing there? He's knocking off debts people owe his master so that they owe him a favor, so that they will be grateful to him after he loses his job and hopefully take him in. We might be surprised as to what happens next. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. Now, this master must have thought, this guy, he is an absolute piece of work. But I tell you what, he's a clever piece of work. He's not the sort of guy I can let go to one of my competitors. I can't let this guy go. Now, even more surprising than the master in the story, this fictional person, is the person who's telling the story. You see, Jesus seems to commend this guy as well. He concludes the story by saying this: "For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of light. I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves. So when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings." Are you surprised that Jesus tells this story? It seems he commends a guy who essentially robs his master blind, also in the sense of self-preservation when he's bound to get the sack. I mean, it's not only morally dubious, is it? It's just plain wrong, pure and simple. But you've got to understand what Jesus is commending. He's not saying this is an upstanding moral character. This is a guy that you should follow morally. No, this guy is, as what my mum would say, a wrong'un. That's what he is. But Jesus is saying this guy has got his head in the right place. This guy is a smart cookie. Now, what's so smart about this manager? Well, this guy, he has the right sense to prepare for the future. That's clever. He has the right sense to make the most of his time and his resources available to him before the inevitable happened. He had the right sense to try and preserve his life. That's clever. And he also had the right sense to act on the knowledge that was available to him. You see, this guy had sense. And Jesus is therefore challenging those who are listening to him at the time as to whether they're going to be smart, whether they've got sense. And Jesus tonight, through his words in Scripture, is challenging you. Have you got sense? Are you going to be smart? Because like this manager, we know that there's something inevitable coming, something looming over each of us. It's the knowledge that one day each of us are going to die. And we don't know when that's going to be, do we? We can't tell. Now, considering we've just come out of a pandemic, apparently, we know that this world's fragile, don't we? Considering what we see on our news screens, all the horrific scenes from Ukraine, we know the fragility of life. One day we will die, and it's inevitable. And maybe then, that represents the line up to which you're willing to invest. See, many of us have the sense to put away stuff for the future. I think we all do that, don't we? Maybe you're saving up for the kids, maybe. Or maybe you're saving up for a rainy day. Maybe you're saving up for some sort of future career or goal. We invest in the future. But do we invest only in this life? That's the question. Is that the line up to the point in which we die? What if you discovered that there was life after death? Would that then move your line of investment? Would it push it across? See, if you're smart, it should. If you've got sense, it should do. Well, this is one reason why Jesus was raised from the dead, so that you can have confidence investing in an eternal future. See, Jesus died and he was laid in a tomb. But the amazing claim of Christianity is not only that he died for us, he died for our sins, but then 3 days later, he was raised for us as well. Now, this changes everything. If Jesus rose from the dead, that vindicates everything that he said about himself. If Jesus rose from the dead, then it shows what he achieved on the cross. What Rich was talking about last night, it shows that that worked. It was right. It was received well by God. And it means lots of other things for Christians as well. And we're going to hear a little bit later about what this means to Adrian. He's going to share that. But here's one thing that it guarantees that we can all appreciate. The resurrection shows us, for sure, there is life after death. Jesus has defeated the great enemy, death. And he's shown that, like him, his followers can be raised from the dead. And doesn't that change how you think about your life, knowing that there is life after death? See, if you've got sense, you'll act on this information. Now, remember Ron Wayne? Imagine if he knew what was going to happen with Apple. Imagine he knew the extent to which it was going to take off. Well, don't you think he would have moved that line to which he was willing to invest? If he was like this shrewd manager, then of course he would. He would have acted on that information. Well, how are you going to respond to this information? That there is life after death. Does that not move your line to which you're willing to invest? See, if you've got sense, you'll be looking into preserving not only yourself in this life, but preserving your afterlife. And in view of the resurrection, do you have sense to preserve your eternity? See, if you do, consider how you invest your time now. Act on this knowledge like the shrewd manager did. Be like the shrewd manager and take even drastic action. Now, maybe you've come here tonight and it's out of pure intrigue. Maybe it's to appease your Christian friend who invited you. Maybe you've been weighing up the Christian claims for quite a while now and you're seriously considering them. But now you know that there's life after death. The resurrection of Jesus, it proves it. So spend your time settling your business with God. Settle your account with him now. You've got Christians around you. They're on your tables. They're the people who have invited you. Spend time, grill them. Ask them tough questions. I don't think they'll mind. You've got literature that you could take time out and invest in and read up to give yourself confidence in these claims. That's what we're sharing with you tonight. You can take away a book that will help you to answer these tough questions. You've got 2 more opportunities after tonight to discover more about these why questions, what Rob and what Scott's going to be speaking on later in the week. Invest the time you've got in this life, securing the life to come. That's right sense, isn't it? Well, maybe you think that actually exploring Christianity is a bit of a risky thing. Maybe you think, well, actually, if this is all there is, if this life is it, well, I should just be living it up. I'll forget this Jesus chat and just get on with my life. But that's why the resurrection of Jesus is so important for those who want to follow him and live eternally. See, the resurrection shows that it's no risk to invest, even radically, in the life to come as opposed to this one. See, there's no time that you're going to miss out on that you can't make up in eternity. There's no pleasure that you're going to miss out on now that won't be superseded by knowing Christ eternally. Investing everything in this life now is like selling your shares for $800 when eventually it'll be worth $32 billion. Don't be a Ron Wayne. Don't be a Ron Wayne. Take on board Jesus' words and have the right sense to give your life to him. Thank you all for listening. Please do discuss round tables. You've got some questions to prompt and food for thought, and grab cakes and drinks. They'll be able to be served now. And in a bit, I'll come back up and we'll hear a bit more from Adrian's story. Thank you.